What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Friday, August 1st, 2025. We got a big episode of the pod to get into today. A lot of recruiting news to break down. We're live here on X as well as the Scoop Duck on 3 YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much for being here. If you are here, leave a comment. Let us know how you're feeling about Oregon recruiting. A big commitment on Thursday, and then 2 more decisions that we're going to be covering the heck out of on Saturday. Not rolling solo. I am thrilled to be joined by Rivals Director of Recruiting, Chad Simmons. Chad, how are you?
Doing great, Max, man. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me, and good to be on the show.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, before we get into the big news, man, we were talking a little bit off camera just about how things are going your way, and things are busy or not busy. But the football season is about to be here, man. And as someone who travels as much as you do, just what's your favorite part about being around those Friday night lights, or sometimes Thursday or Saturday night lights?
For me, I think it's really never changed. Man, I've been in this for 20 plus years now, and it's all about just the FaceTime and the relationships, man. It's great to see games and the cool environments and different parts of the country and meet different, fan bases that subscribe to On 3 or Rivals and all that. But for me, it's always been about getting to know the recruits I get to cover, man. I'm blessed to do this job, and my favorite part is just building that relationship, getting in front of that player, getting to know kind of who he is behind the pads and all those Friday night highlights and stuff like that. So for me, I'm excited to kind of get out to practices, to games, be seen, introduce myself, meet the next wave of blue chip guys in 27, 28 and moving forward. So for me, it's about that FaceTime and just building that true, genuine connection.
Yeah, it's all about relationships, man. I mean, you hear it all the time, but I think definitely in what we do, it certainly comes into play. Let's get right to it, man, and talk about some of the big news that we got on the Oregon recruiting front as 5-star Mobile, Alabama, St. Paul's Episcopal edge Anthony Tank Jones committed to Oregon on Thursday. Jones chose the Ducks over the Crimson Tide and the Aggies. Chad, man, you had a good beat on this one. You talked to Jones after he committed. Just what was your reaction to this news and kind of how the Ducks maybe pulled it off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if you rewind, maybe 6 months ago, I don't think people really took Oregon, as serious as they should in this recruitment. I think people thought, obviously, Alabama, was always the front runner. That was the dream school, the in-state school. He had been there, 10 plus times. They had made him a top recruit, top priority. But I think him getting out to Eugene kind of quietly last fall kind of opened things up for the Ducks to kind of, make themselves a contender in this race. They got him back on campus in the spring, got him back for an official visit, and just kind of kept chopping away, and in the end got it done. And I think this is a huge win. Obviously, Oregon going into Alabama a year ago on signing day to get Naeem offered from, we thought, maybe Auburn was Ohio State's top contender last year, and Oregon swooped in late and got that done in December. And to go back into Alabama again for the number 1 player in the state, all the way across the country in SEC country, another huge win for Dan Lanning. And I think just kind of what it came down to, talking to Tank and people in his circle, were, Dan Lanning being a defensive-minded head coach, being at Alabama, being at Georgia, knowing he has that track record to develop players, coach defense, and Tosh Lapoy coaching at Alabama, being in SEC country before, his track record as well, and just kind of, the brand, the name, the Nike, and then, of course, NIL was a big part of it too. And I think all that pushed Oregon to the top and kind of surprised people to beat Alabama.
It was just such a shock, I think, not so much for me, I guess, with Anthony Jones picking Oregon this time, but what you mentioned, Naeem offered last cycle, like that was a huge shocker. I remember I woke up that morning and I was thinking that he was going to go to Oregon, but I didn't have a ton of conviction about it. So I was like, all right, it's now or never, got to go for it. And that was one of those picks that you put in and you just kind of cross your fingers. But this one with Anthony Tank Jones is just massive as Oregon continues to push not only into the state of Alabama, but really the Southeast. And that's a theme that I always like to dig into, Chad, because the Ducks have to recruit nationally, being where they are. So seeing that you're someone in the South, just What's your perception of Oregon, or I guess what are you hearing as far as the Ducks when you're talking to guys out there?
Well, they're just a brand, man. They're a national brand. Obviously the Nike headquarters and what they do from uniforms and all that puts Oregon, on guys, radar, early in life. It's just college football fans. I mean, the flash, what they do from, every week wearing the different uniform. I think that kind of helps open the door to Oregon. But I think Lanning coming from, SEC football, I think, and being part of Georgia's national championship team, his resume, what he's done, he knows what it's like to recruit against the big boys in the South, like the Alabamas, like the Georgias, the LSUs. He's been in the trenches there. He knows what they do. He's been under Nick Saban, been under Kirby Smart, arguably the best two college football coaches in the last decade of college football. So I think he knows how to recruit. He knows how important recruiting is. I think he knows how important to be hands-on in recruiting is. He knows how important relationships are. And obviously, I think, the NIL has changed things too, where it's not just like, a decade ago, you think about kids growing up a fan and trying to stay loyal and go to that dream school or maybe a school close to home where family can see them play. But with NIL, it's opened the door where kids can kind of put into those agreements about getting their family to games, get them on a flight to here and there. So I think it's opened the door to schools like Oregon to take advantage of that and to use that brand and use Dan Lanning's name and track record and build on recruiting the country, which Oregon is doing a good job of right now.
Yeah, I love that point about just and how NIL is kind of impacting things now, because I think people expect it to just be like some huge lump sum, but there are specifics, within those deals and offers and whatnot that, talk about getting families out to games. And one of the things that reminded me of that came to mind rather with Anthony Jones's commitment, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, Chad, was Decorian Moore's commitment from a year ago. Both of those guys were, I think, the number one player in their state, if not like right up there. But they kind of announced their commitment to Oregon around this framework of being different, kind of blazing their own trail. And with Anthony Jones, like, this isn't the Bama anymore that he grew up going to those games and that he kind of knew of with Nick Saban. So I think that opened the door as well. So I don't know. I guess I just wanted to ask you what you think about that kind of being different mindset and how that's maybe helping the Ducks on the trail.
Yeah, I mean, I think, kids now are like you said, open-minded. They're not, obviously even Decorian Moore being, a Texas kid was committed to LSU, not even in-state school for him, where obviously people thought he would end up at some point at Texas, early in his recruitment, that he would, if he ended up changing his mind, he would go the Texas route. Then obviously Oregon got him on the official visit in June, and he made his decision, I think, July 4th last year, or around early July. But yeah, I think kids are just kind of open-minded. There's more opportunities now than just staying home, just kind of playing for that dream school. It's a business decision. Yes, sometimes it does work out where kids can stay at home, go to that dream school, get, the NIL package they're looking for, and all works out the way it would have 10 years ago. But a lot of times we're seeing now where, 10 years ago, if Tank Jones is a recruit in that class back in 2016, 17, 18, he's going to Alabama. He's going to play for Nick Saban. He's going to commit early, be a face of that class. But college football is not the same now as it was then. They want to build their brand. They want to kind of have success, not just in the future, but financial success, right now for them and their family. And they have to make what they feel is the best decision. And that opens people's doors like Oregon to go into the South or go into Texas and get elite players.
Very well said, Chad. The more I think about Oregon recruiting and just where things are at, like, I think back to Willie Taggart. He was the one that really showed that you can recruit at a high level to Oregon. He brought in Cristobal. He took it up a level higher. And then now Lanning comes in after Cristobal, and we continue to just push into unprecedented waters. I started covering the Ducks in 2018. And like you were saying back then, if I talked about Tank Jones in this class, the number one player from Alabama, I think some people would have called me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, like you said, Taggart, Cristobal, now Lanning, To me, you can't get much better at recruiting than what Oregon's doing right now. To me, it all comes down to winning that first national championship at Oregon and kind of putting the roster he has together, from recruiting for the most part, high school prospects to the transfer portal, putting key pieces there, putting that all together. He has a great coaching staff. They won last year the Big Ten. We're ranked number 1 in college football for most of the season. They're knocking on the door for that national championship. To me, that's the only thing left, for Oregon/Dan Lanning to get done. He recruits with the best. He's shown he can win battles against Alabama, against Texas, against USC. All of that. He knows how to do all of that. Now, putting it all together, winning the national championship, winning that, I guess, 3 or 4 games now in the playoff system, and getting that trophy to Eugene.
Max Torres here on the Ducks Dish podcast, talking with Rivals Director of Recruiting, Chad Simmons, here on a Friday. We're live streaming. If you guys are here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel wherever you guys are tuned in. We're rolling along here. We just talked about a big commitment for Oregon on Thursday. Are the Ducks going to be adding 2 more on Saturday? Let's switch gears here a little bit, Chad, and talk about one of the top uncommitted prospects kind of really in your backyard. I mean, he's out in the Peach State, and that is 4-star Sewanee, Georgia, Collins Hill defensive lineman Deuce Gerald's top 100 caliber player, set to commit on Saturday. Got Oregon, LSU, Ole Miss, Ohio State in the mix here. What's your kind of feel for this one as we enter the final hours?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're, roughly 24 hours or so out, and I still lean Oregon's way. Look, we know LSU is battling. He's got family in Louisiana. That's been so-called his dream school. His dad played at Ole Miss. He loves SEC football. Obviously, LSU much closer in this region to his family and his hometown now in Georgia than Eugene. But, talking to people as late as of today, I would still lean towards Oregon. But there is, some buzz and some optimism in Baton Rouge about LSU being capable of getting this one done, in the final hours. So I don't think it's a done deal. I know he's still communicating with LSU, with Oregon. I think, Ole Miss has tried to hang around, but I think it's LSU and Oregon coming down to the wire here when he makes that decision. And I don't think he's given anybody, a concrete answer. I still, based on intel from talking to people in that circle, I like Oregon right now with a slight edge, but I'm definitely not sleeping on LSU.
I'm right there with you, Chad. I have my RPM pick on Oregon, but if you're gonna put one school in that late shock category, I think LSU makes a whole lot of sense, especially when you consider those ties like you mentioned there. I think for Oregon with Deuce Gerald's, they were kind of a little bit late to the party, I would say. Maybe not late to the party, but like they didn't really get traction, I feel like, until the spring. And then they just kind of continue to ramp it up steadily throughout the summer. But for you, Chad, as someone who's seen him, I think he's kind of got a unique, play style, unique frame. Certainly he's listed on Rivals at 6'1", 268 pounds, but the tape is pretty darn outstanding. Under Armour All-American. Just what do you think about Deuce as a player? What kind of stands out to you from your time seeing him in person?
Yeah, I would say, I've been watching him play like live games. I mean, he's at the same school that Travis Hunter was at. So, I had heard about Deuce, coming through his middle school days, and, he played with, up there with Travis Hunter, and then Sam Horn went to Missouri to play quarterback. A lot of big names that come through that program. They won a state championship just a few years ago. And, for me, just watching kids in Georgia, really throughout my whole entire career, I mean, he's one of the most consistent, I would say, game wreckers that I've seen. Look, I think it's a mixed bag when you talk to people on the next level about kind of, does he fit into your scheme? Is he kind of boxed in a little bit with his frame? He's not the tallest, he's not the longest, but he is dynamic in the trenches, man. He's quick. He's strong. He has multiple moves off the ball. He can win getting slim. He can win with power. He can win with leverage. He can move around inside, outside, depending on if you're an odd man front, even man front. There's a lot of things he can do. And honestly, I've seen him play, I can't tell you how many times, from regular season to preseason to postseason. And every game's the same. He makes a lot of plays and impacts the game, either him making the play or helping his teammates make a play. So look, he's a dynamic player, and his recruitment has been pretty known, at least in my circle, about being NIL driven. He wants to get paid what he feels like his value is. And that's kind of what it's coming down to. And I feel like it's given, Oregon, which I've heard has the biggest offer, at this time, the edge. He likes Oregon for other reasons too, but LSU's trying to creep up to that. But he just wants what he feels is fair value for what he brings to the table. And again, it's been a mixed bag from people I've talked to on the next level about how high he is on their board and how they see him fitting into their scheme. But look, you can watch the tape and you can be a person who doesn't know a whole lot about football, but you'll see number 2 flash a lot in your screen. So he wants to get what he feels is fair value for him in the NIL game. And that's a big part I've heard for this decision.
We'll see what happens with Deuce Gerald's on Saturday when he announces his college commitment. Certainly one of the more versatile players that I've seen for Oregon this cycle on the recruiting trail. I mean, we're watching his tape here, Chad, and he's got running back highlights. I mean, how many guys do you see that play defensive line have running back highlights to show for it? We got one more guy to talk about, Chad, while we have you here on the show, and that is 4-star Westlake Village, California, Oaks Christian cornerback Davon Benjamin. He'll be announcing his commitment on Saturday as well. You have Oregon, North Carolina, Texas, Washington, and Michigan in the running for Davon Benjamin. I have my pick on the Ducks. It's kind of felt like a matter of when, not if. But what's your pulse on this one as we, again, get into that final stretch?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we've both kind of been reporting to our own audiences from, me on the national side and you obviously with Oregon and Southern California where you're at to your audience. I mean, I think for some time, going back over a year, Oregon's been the team, others have tried to catch and tried to beat when Davon makes that decision on Saturday night. I've heard he's going to have, a huge ceremony and, a lot of lights, a lot of glitz and glamour, DJ, all this kind of stuff at a big event in North LA up there and in that area. And it kind of only fits, I think, Oregon's brand, the glitz and glamour of their uniforms and their flash and kind of what they do. But look, I've heard nothing that's told me anything different than what you just said about Oregon, again, trending here late, again, being the team to beat. We've seen, probably 8 to 10 schools get him on campus the last, 4, 5, 6 months. And, he's done his due diligence and he's been to SEC country, ACC, Big Ten. We thought at one time, early in the spring, late winter, maybe USC was making a push as a big competitor, for them. We've heard now since OVs, Michigan, Texas pushing hard as the top 3, maybe with Oregon. But I've heard nothing ever throughout this recruitment since the OV started telling me that Oregon was not the favorite for Davon Benjamin. So I think there's confidence in Eugene. They can get this done with Wadood and obviously Chris Hampton, Dan Lanning and staff all kind of making it like a priority. But look, Michigan's done a good job to get in this. Texas obviously is a huge brand in the SEC as well. But I think Oregon, based on what I'm hearing right now, is in store for pretty big news come Saturday evening.
Yeah, the latest intel that I'm hearing also suggests that Oregon's in a good spot here. But, I mean, we've said it time and again, Chad, like nothing is a done deal. Nothing is a guarantee in the NIL era. And Michigan and Texas are certainly some of the best teams when it comes to that department right now. But for Oregon and Davon Benjamin, I mean, they've missed on all of their other cornerback targets so far this cycle. So this is the one that you kind of have to have, I think, if you're Oregon. I mean, it wouldn't be a disaster scenario if they didn't get him, but if they did get him, boy, Chad, that would just, I think, really kind of be the cherry on top of a phenomenal defensive back haul this class.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think, it almost helps Davon and his circle a little bit when they miss other guys to make his value, again, in the NIL world that much higher, where they can kind of use that as leverage, against Oregon or whoever they're trying to go to when he becomes, well, he was probably already, if not the top guy, one of the top guys on that cornerback board for Oregon. He probably has been for 2 years plus. I mean, he's an elite talent, from the West Coast. Obviously, Oregon has a lot of success up and down California, specifically in Southern California. And, I think they have a great shot here. And he knows he's a priority. His people know that he's going to get paid. And I think Oregon's in a good spot from relationships and from NIL.
All right, Chad, I got one more question for you before we get out of here, if that's all right. Oregon's class, number 6 nationally, number 2 in the Big Ten, trailing just USC. 4 5-star commits. Let's just go broad, man. What are your kind of big takeaways from this Oregon class when you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I like, obviously, like you mentioned, defensive backs. I mean, I'm a huge fan of like Jet Washington and kind of what he brings to the table from Bishop Gorman, and, long, versatile athlete. I mean, we talked about Naeem last year, but I think just the athletes, man, I said it last year when they signed those guys with Naeem Offord, DeCorian Moore, Dorian Brew. I mean, guys, they just athletes, man. You get a guy like Jalen Lott from Texas, an athlete. If you get a guy like Davon, an athlete. I mean, guys that can play with speed. You got to play fast in today's college game. Yes, you got to have a mix of physicality, up front, and you got to win in the trenches to win games, but you got to have dynamic playmakers on both sides of the ball that can make big plays and change games. And to me, I just like the speed, the versatility, the kind of the home run hitters on offense and defense. They're getting not just this year, but last year as well.
That is Chad Simmons, Director of Recruiting for Rivals. Chad, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. If you guys want to find more of Chad, make sure to tap in with him. He's at Chad Simmons _ name right there on your screen. He's the best in the business, and we are so grateful to have him. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me anywhere at Torres Sports. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck on 3 YouTube channel. Come and see us at scoopduck.com. There's no better time to join with fall camp in full swing and Oregon looking like they're heating up here on the recruiting trail. But until next time, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.